The original space referred to as chaos is fundamentally imperceptible. If you get stuck in this process, well, you just stop existing. Physically, you will really stop existing. Everything, material, everything structured, everything is destroyed. Such is its nature, this decal. You won't be able to hold on to your form anymore. You won't be able to be manifested. It will completely pull you in there. At the moment of Mahapralaya, the original gathers back into wholeness and sinks into the decal. And it doesn't matter at all who, what, where you have reached. It doesn't matter, absolutely. Because absolutely everything manifested will connect and disappear.
Hello everyone, my name is Yana. Today I will be interviewing Anton, our master of energy work, a practitioner and keeper of ancient knowledge. Anton, I thank you for being with us. I believe that Anton's practices are among the most powerful of all that exist in esotericism and spirituality. And if you want to grow, if you want to achieve your spiritual goals, then you are definitely in the right place. Anton, let's move on to the first question. To transition to that, I would like to share my impression of the practice that you once taught. It was a very interesting practice. You know, it's like opening up a whole universe. It was a practice for feeling energy at the fingertips. And it was very unusual, very interesting. And in connection with this, I have a question. Can we, by immersing our attention in our sensations and studying our energy, reach the Creator? To find within ourselves that point from where everything began and from where our beautiful world originated?
Well, the fingertips of the hands and feet are really the very beginning of the course. This is in fact the first practice that is part of the first course of practical energy work. And this is where the study of oneself as a body of second attention begins, of the energy body. What's most interesting is that despite the fact that this is an absolutely initial practice, it subsequently gives the opportunity to reach the sensation of the whirlwind of energy, which is also located in front of the fingertips. This whirlwind of energy is like an echo of the space from which the original emerged. So, in response to your question, I can say that through these processes, you can not only reach the original, but also perceive that the space, that chaos. In my tradition, this chaos is called a decalin, from which everything originally emerged. This is all. It is found in our energy, in our field, and by developing our extrasensory perception, starting from the fingertips of our hands, ultimately, a practicing person reaches the space of the original chaos to the very adecalin. From it, the Shivas emerge as the first manifestations. 3. He returns to it at the moment of Mahapralaya.
I have a follow-up question right away from this. In this state of the chaos of the primordial source, is there any order there? That's a paradoxical question. But if there isn't any, then where does it come from? How does it arise? And how does this order which we see in life, the harmony of our world, come about? I believe that our world is very harmonious. Where does it come from? And the same Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga, these cycles, how do they form?
That's quite a big question.
I know it's very difficult to answer. Try to keep it brief.
So, it all happens somehow. That original space, referred to as chaos, is not subject to perception in principle. So, to some extent, it's just speculation. These are attempts to describe the indescribable. These are attempts to talk about what is imperceptible and motivated by various effects from the interaction with this space, motivated by what happens to you when you direct your attention to the energies called decays. What happens to you when the decays direct their attention to you? Well, apart from chaos, apart from force here, it's hard to find other words. It happens the way it happens in our manifested world. So that chaos is imperceptible. Chaos begins here. When you direct your attention to those spaces, practicing people direct their attention there, not very often, quite rarely, because they understand perfectly well that if you get stuck in this process, well, you will simply cease to exist. You won't be able to maintain your form anymore. You won't be able to be manifested. It will completely pull you in there. And this, physically, you will really cease to exist. Everything, material, everything structured, everything complex, everything subject to some kind of rules, order, patterns, everything gets destroyed. That's the nature of this decay. It's a force, it's an energy that exists beyond rules, beyond the order established by order. Such is the nature of this decay. It is a power, it is an energy that is beyond the rules, beyond the order established by the order. And that's why practicing people consciously strive to interact with it, to keep a little bit of that energy inside themselves in order to go beyond the orders they are in. If we are talking about human existence is a way out of the order of Brahma, that is, the creator of our universe's egg, the creator. And essentially, we are in his dream, no matter how strange that may sound. Human form. And essentially, we are in his dream, no matter how strange that may sound. And in order to break free from this order, there must be something greater within you. What exists in this dream?
How can we be sure? So, this initial point is not a consequence of something even greater. We can't be sure of that in any way.
No way, we just can't be sure of that.
And this won't pass. What further distortions might arise if we start from this? The statement is that,
Course will parade.
so how do we practice in this area?
Go and see for yourself.
Well, okay, we've reached the point where the creator is, and we've seen this chaos. Can we see it?
Yes, we can direct our attention there, but we can't see it.
So can we feel it?
Well, look, in physics, there's a term called dark matter. Then they came up with the term dark energy. What is that? So they note that there is some kind of influence to the material world. But what does this influence do? What does this influence do? It turns out they don't see it. So there is an influence. The material world doesn't move according to the rules and orders that they can track. So some kind of influence is present. But who exerts this influence? What exerts this influence? What kind of force is this? It's not possible to detect. It's the same here when a practicing person studies energy, sees it, feels it, realizes it, develops it, influences the material world, influences other people. Doesn't exert influence, just studies, travels. So they take quite meaningful and specific actions that don't require confirmation. Is the same way, I'm not asking for confirmation that this is me.
That's an obvious fact. I'm getting to the point that this is a big question.
Is that really you? No, that's not a question. That's already philosophy.
This is philosophy.
We can ponder this for a very long time and with great effort. Yes, we can receive enjoying life without asking such questions. Yes, there are people who are willing to sit in one place and spend their lives brainstorming. I'm not interested in that. It's too boring for me. That's why I spend my life reaching such points in space, such opportunities that, well, basically it's not implied that they can be achieved, but they exist, and the beings that exist in these spaces also exist. You can, in principle, contact them, you can communicate with them, and again, regarding our topic of conversation, and where is it really, yes, where is the truth? Yeah, who knows where it is?
It's an endless process like that, yes.
It's an endless process. While we direct our attention to the sleep of Brahma, it generates an infinite number of forms, an infinite number of scenarios, an infinite number of possibilities, probabilities of everything. You can look at it for a long time and hard, and it will never end. It's like a kaleidoscope. So how long do you keep looking? A kaleidoscope always creates something new. But you can stop looking into the kaleidoscope.
By the way, you mentioned Brahma, and I have a question that came to mind. Why is it important for us to wake up or become aware and do something before Brahma wakes up? So you mentioned this at some point.
That's not true. How? Because it's not important to us. Just look at how many people have rotted in their graves and how many people have realized the body of light.
Is it important to you?
It's important to me, but it's not important to us. This is a very important point.
This is an important point.
Yes. So when you say us out loud, it implies humanity. I look at humanity and there's no need to go far. There's a window. We have a studio. I can go up and take a look. And so what? Who is training to realize the body of light? No one is training. A person is engaged in what seems important to him. And this is not understanding at all. God, this is not the understanding of oneself. This is not the understanding of reality. It's not an attempt to perceive the imperceptible. Okay? A person just spends their life on whims.
Then why is it important to you? Look, when we sleep, a person sleeps, we see some images, something happens in that dream. We wake up and those images disappear. What difference does it make? You will find yourself above them in the universe, evil, just like you said, or you. For example, you want to achieve your goal. What difference does it make anyway if Brahma is going to wake up anyway? And what difference does it make what will happen?
Well, if you listen to me carefully, I'm actually saying out loud that we should wake up from Brahma's dream, rather than waiting for him to wake up.
So, you will become aware of yourself when you wake up from the dream, Brahma's too?
Of course, preserving one's identity is fundamental in all principles of practice. Obviously, for anyone. A person who has dedicated at least some time of their life to esotericism, to reading, to Vedic literature there, Puranas, Shastras, entry, there's a lot of literature here. At some point, it becomes obvious that even if you don't do anything at all, even if you completely lose, as a result of your inaction, the ability to perceive, and it turns into a little black crystal, you'll go to the space of the first gates and just lie there until the end of time. Even in the Bible, it's written that this place is called hell, and there were no devils. That's drawn out later. You can study the primary sources. So, basically, on a global scale, it doesn't matter, because there's this moment called Mahapralaya. At the moment of Mahapralaya, the original, manifested one, once again gathers into wholeness and plunges into Adikalin. And it doesn't matter at all. Who, what, where have you reached? Who have you become? What did you see there? What did you not see? Where did you look? What were you doing? It doesn't matter. Absolutely. Because absolutely everything is manifested, and it will connect and then disappear.
That's it.
Mahapralaya.
You won't care anymore. Well, if you'll achieve your goal when all of this comes together in one point. At that point, even your goal won't have any meaning.
My goal will have meaning.
It will have meaning.
Because my goal has returned from this process. Do you understand what the deal is? When you say, I want to spend 1 billion conditional units, but you understand that before you can spend them, you need to earn them first. Well, or somehow obtain it. Before you can obtain it, you need to do something, some preliminary actions about obtaining all of this. So you have a certain node sequence. It's the same here when I say that. I want to dodge such a process, like Mahapralaya, and at the same time, I'm in the dream of Brahma. It's obvious to me that first I need to dodge the dream of Brahma. Because if he wakes up and I'm still here, that's it, snap, and I'm gone. It's the same as the characters in anyone's dream. Who sees these dreams? So, gradually, little by little, carefully. First, we dodge the usual, well-known death, when you just go either into the furnace or into the ground. This is done through the body of light. I've shown these practices, and we gather from time to practice. Then, having gained the body of light, you jump out of the dream of Brahma, meaning you gain freedom from its illusions. You stop watching the endless kaleidoscope. Yeah, you can look there as much as you want, but I don't want to look there. I'm tired of dealing with this. Next, you enter the space of Vishnu, who dreams just like Brahma does. But while Brahma dreams his egg of the universe, Vishnu dreams of all Brahmas at the same time, all the eggs of the universe. There are many of them. I once talked about how reality is structured.
About the little tomatoes, right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. It's like a bush with little tomatoes, but each little tomato is a Brahma. So you first jump out of the little tomato and find yourself in this bush. And then you realize a form called Sri Yantra. You realize it. I mean, not in the sense that you know what it is. Not in the sense that you've gone through initiation. No one is interested in any of this. You need to master this and realize it in a way that allows you to exit the space of Vishnu. What does it mean to exit the space? Vishnu, that means to find yourself in the space of Kali. We can't interact with her without being destroyed while being here. That's why it's referred to as chaos. So it's only when you try to get close to her that you start falling apart. It's the same as visiting a black hole. Those who understand these processes even a little bit, maybe I should understand right away what we're talking about. You can't just visit a black hole. It will tear you apart into pieces. And even no one really knows what it is. Yes, no. You don't just go for a visit. You settle there and live. And you could say what it carries, how one can settle and live in a black door. But there are beings, some counted 18, others counted 36. It doesn't really matter. But the main thing is that they exist. These beings are called Rishis, and somehow, in an incredible way, they manage to live in the space of Kali, directly interacting with it and not being destroyed. And so, 12 Rishis. Well, let it be 18. It's not about the numbers right now. It just depends on the sources you get your information from. Different numbers. And different numbers don't just appear out of nowhere. So, because when some conscious unit moves into this space, it can accumulate several conscious units and then merge into a conglomerate. Well, it's like, you can run a business alone, or you can run a business with a partner, splitting it 50-50. And that's why some beings, upon gaining their freedom, didn't go alone. But when they gained their freedom, naturally, they united into a whole. It's the same as saying, for example, there's a man, right? And then there's a family. A family is a few people, but still a family is a whole. Well, if everything is good, and you can count them as families, you can count them as people, the numbers will be different. If you count them as families and count them as people, the numbers will be different. But the essence of it won't change much. It's the same there. That's why I say there's no need to chase after the numbers right now. But the 12 Rishis, the original teachers, passed on the knowledge to people about how to do this. 12 parameters were formed. Specifically, my parameter where I received knowledge organized by a Rishi named Agastya. In other lineages, the knowledge is very similar. They correlate a lot, but there are some nuances, there are some different approaches. Well, the essence is the same. Yeah, there are different words, a little different practices. The essence is the same. Well then, and this knowledge is about the Sri Yantra. Yes, there is initiation. Yes, there is transmission. Yeah, everything that people know about everything, that's just how it is. But the very fact of this initiation, the transmission of this knowledge doesn't really solve anything at all. You just know a little video now, but to do it for you if no one else starts before that everything starts. That is, when they explain to you how it is, yeah, it's the same thing. You come up to him. Yeah, let's say, what business are you talking about? Listen, how to make money. Now look, you do it this way, that way. There is such and such. I understand you. I understand everything. Come on, you're initiated. No one will make money for you. The fact that you know how to make money means he makes it for himself, not for you. It's the same here. You received this knowledge, I received this knowledge. And that's it. I went to put this knowledge into practice. As of today, I continue to apply this knowledge for myself. I share this knowledge with those who are in principle interested, and in doing so, I continue to develop and improve myself. And this process will last until then, until I realize my intentions.
Friends, everything we talk about, you can. To feel it, to live it, to practice it properly. Fortunately, we have everything for that. Anton recorded the courses. It's all in the links under the video. So if we go back a little to reality, how to distinguish the creator's intention from a human mistake? For example, a person makes some kind of mistake. I know that a mistake is such a concept, stretchable, but still it generates some negativity, some negative scenarios, which makes it unpleasant for some people. Can we say that this was the creator's intention and that it was interesting to them? And isn't this, by the way, shifting the responsibility onto the creator? Or should a person understand that they were wrong?
Look, if the starting point is you yourself, you start to see people who think that the creator can make mistakes. In the creator's intentions, there are no mistakes. There are many options.
Okay, but then a person realizes that they were wrong, something will change.
Again, as soon as we enter the territory of truth and falsehood, good and evil, duality, we do not understand the creator's intention. We think with human logic, which is divided, fragmented, and incomplete. But when you think with incomplete logic, it becomes obvious that good and evil, bad and good, like and dislike, and all of that. The creator doesn't have such processes, doesn't have this logic, it's human logic. The creator is multivariant, and all variations are present equally. It's the same as a kaleidoscope, creating all sorts of patterns. And there are no bad or good patterns.
I understand what you're talking about, but how do we live in this material world without having any of those, boundaries? How should I behave? Because many people say, for example, I did it this way because, well, there are those
So what?
people who say that the creator was just so curious. It's just such an intention.
Well then, how is that? You walked up, hit him in the face, and said, well, that's also part of the intention.
So really everything will do what it needs to, right?
No, you do everything as it should be because you are a part of the Creator. You see, when a person reaches a certain level awareness, he sees that he is a part of this original. He is the Creator, simply put. For some reasons, their abilities are still limited. It's the same as every sperm cell being a potential adult man or woman who can create a bunch of those sperm cells or egg cells. But while you're just this little worm or egg cell, you're not a complete person. You're only a potential person. But everything is within you. Please develop it. It will turn on. The same thing, every person. And this is potentially original. And these are not just empty words because everything came from him. And we, as perceiving particles, particles that have the potential for perception, possess the qualities of the Creator. And the human form possesses the entire genome of the Creator. Is it off? Yes, it's off. But no one is stopping you from turning it on. You have it. There are beings that don't have this genome. So even if they want to turn it on, they have nothing to turn on. They don't have it. We have it present, but it's turned off. But it can be turned on. That's the first point. The second point, when a practicing person reaches certain levels of awareness, it becomes an obvious fact for them. He's like, aha, I am a potential creator. That's a fact. Aha. This is not turned on for me, but I can turn it on. And then my abilities, my power will increase dramatically. Power is ability, that you become strong, but in the sense that you have the ability to be able to, so you can do it. You can use it, or you can choose not to use it. You can just do it. This is the degree of your freedom. The most free one is our original self, revealing all possible facets of your abilities. You're getting closer to it. And if a person gets carried away in this state, they miss one very important detail. Another person, exactly the same original one, and he has exactly the same abilities. And sometimes another person without training can still express this in some very strong emotional and sensory experiences. He doesn't need to train for that, but if you dig into him, it will come out, hit you, and then go back in. And the person won't even understand what came out of them and how it worked. Because he lacks knowledge, he lacks practice, but he has it, and it can be activated if you dig deep enough. And so when a practicing person, a knowledgeable person, forgets that they are surrounded by other creators, in different states of sleep and in different states of possibilities, and then they start to show off, to boast, then at some point in time in some other person, a greater power awakens than what the practitioner has, and it puts them in their place very firmly. Let's take a very sharp, very tough topic, but at the same time, if we don't look at it through rose-colored glasses, it becomes obvious to us. Rapists, perverts, murderers, which of them false? Dead. No one who among them just rots away in a few days from illness. No one who punishes them. That's why chaos happens. Another person punishes another person. A person punishes another person, not God. And what's most interesting is that this is an obvious fact. So we have a criminal, a scoundrel, a rogue. He's minding his own business until they get caught. He won't get caught in front of another person until he's exposed. And as soon as he's exposed, he's punished by people, not God people. For God, it's just a multitude of possibilities. There's a variation where he gets caught, and there's a variation where he doesn't get caught, and there's a variation where he doesn't exist at all. For the Creator, it's all equivalent. It's just a kaleidoscope of events. Only people punish people.
Do you think people will ever be able to scientifically prove everything we're talking about right now?
Of course they will.
And will this even make any sense? Or when will it be proven? Will there be some new facets, some new layers of the unknown for humanity?
Yes, no, it will happen on its own naturally.
So you think there will be such a decisive moment?
Only in human history have there been situations where all of humanity was first convinced of one thing, and then, oh, we were all wrong. So what? Something has changed. We also fight with each other. We earn money. We study other aspects of reality. So nothing has really changed on a global scale. The technologies have just changed. The approach and understanding of the universe have changed. So when the existence of God is scientifically proven, along with the existence of the original and the multiverse, and the many variations, Well, a person will say, well, it turns out they wrote about it in ancient books, and now we're going to war. Why? Because that's also an absolutely integral part of human life. Well, some will definitely go to love each other, but there will always be those who want to kill.
I want to talk to you, Anton, about popular concepts in the field of esotericism and spirituality. And I know that you are a person who doesn't just guess how all this happens or have some opinion, but actually knows. The position, yes, and specifically knows and sees how all these processes happen. Of course, I would really like to ask these questions and hear the answers. Let's start with the concept of enlightenment. It's broad, extensive. Try to answer it.
Yes, it's quite simple. I completely understand that everything is being lumped together under this term right now, but for me personally, enlightenment is when a person has seen, experienced. Perceiving reality as it is, well, after that you'll never be the same. Yes, you can't hold on in that state. I can't stay in that state. But after you've experienced it at least once, well, at the very least, you can be called enlightened.
Well, you could say that there are very few of those people, the truly enlightened ones.
Well, there are definitely not many. Of course, they are not just a few. And the people who practiced with me, yes, they all experienced that state.
Yes, not just a few. I exaggerated that.
When I say they practiced with me, I mean not now, but back when I was still learning myself. Everyone has already seen everything. The people who practiced with me, some have already seen. Not everyone, of course. You can't live in that state. You can't be active in that state. But this state determines your entire future path and your worldview for yourself, naturally. Explaining it to someone, conveying it to someone. How many situations like that have I had? There were few of them, but already a sufficient number when you train a person, develop them, give them these practices, give them these skills, pass on the settings. The person is completely loyal to you. They are fully with you, confident. And he shakes his head. He says, yes, I understand everything. Yes, that's all right. Yes, that's it. Yes, that's everything. And then he experiences it. It's a state of perceiving reality independently. And then he comes in, I say, well.
He's like, right.
Yes, that. And with him, you can only just be silent about it. Because everything he was nodding his head to, in reality, those were just his beliefs, the ideas he trusted or believed in me. But when a person experiences it on their own, there were even cases when you're saying everything wrong. I say, well, say it differently in a way that you would like. Okay, this will do.
Okay, all right. So tell me, please, do all these conversations we have about the universe have any meaning or benefit at all without practice? For example, we are talking right now, and essentially, we are not practicing right at this moment. Is there even any benefit to this? That's a slightly provocative question. But are conversations really there, sacred scriptures or something like that, describing something? Is it really pointless to talk about all this?
The provocation here is just in one word. That's us. Well, if we separate into I and you, then it will be possible to express things more specifically. But if you take me, I practice 24/7, 365 days a year. My practice can no longer stop. If I stop my practice, I will probably perish very quickly. I can't lose consciously because those speeds which become available, they do not imply prolonged idiocy. So your idiocy quickly deprives you of life. That's why awareness, the perception of energy, the perception of channels, the perception of the heart is permanent. So my state today is a constant practice. For the people who have been training and practicing with me for a significant amount of time, this state also becomes an obvious necessity. It just takes a start. Acting like an idiot, being foolish, holding yourself back. The braking is very harsh, but at least you move quickly. But you can achieve, I don't know, in just a few days what an ordinary person would take half their life to achieve. So there are some nuances. You can draw an analogy with a car. You can walk, and most likely, whatever you crash into won't harm your health. You can drive a car at 90-100 kilometers per hour. Plus or minus, there are already some nuances. And you can move on a 320 motorcycle, it's easy to fly. But there, yes, one mistake, and that's it, your journey is over. I'm probably not just on a motorcycle anymore, but flying on a rocket. On the public roads. But I'm just joking, of course, to make it clear.
So you can gain acceleration?
Of course. But the consequences are also inappropriate. So it won't be possible to lose it anymore. Awareness. So that's the first point. The second point, as for the texts, when I first picked up the Vedas and started reading them, and the ordinary Indian Vedas, I'm reading, and I'm thinking, wow, what nonsense is this? What's the point of all this? Those who have tried to read them, I think they'll understand what I'm talking about. I tried to read the Srimad Bhagavatam. I tried to read the Bhagavad Gita. Well, fairy tales, stories. Yeah, I've seen something like that in the Bible too, where it just breaks your head. Well, if you're reading the Old Testament, you start reading about who begat whom. You think, why am I reading this? What's the point of this information for me? Where's the part about God? Where are the practices? Where are the exercises given? What is this book even for? Why does it have any value? Then, time passed. 3. I've managed to feel something, see something, and learn something through the practice of exercises. I started reading Mahamirvan Tanpru, and I was reading it not with my head anymore. I was reading it with my heart. I was reading the vibrations that this text contains, the state that this choice of words conveys, the mood that this text is infused with, and this state is deeply immersed in practice. It's no longer just a book that you read. It's a source of tuning, like a tuning fork, that you adjust to and start perceiving reality on a completely different level. From this perspective, yes, holy books have every right to be called holy because the settings they contain allow you to feel this world in a completely different way, completely differently. Position your consciousness. Let's say this will be an altered state of consciousness, but with this altered state of consciousness, you can become aware of, touch, and connect with aspects that you couldn't even grasp before. So, from the perspective of being a tool, these books are quite serious. But for this tool to work for you, you need to have at least some sensitivity and be at least dedicated to something, not in the sense that you are dedicated to your scalp, but to the whole thing. And in the sense that I trained and achieved results in what was explained to you and what was told to you. So you need to read the book like a psychic. And then, yes, then it's a very serious, very beautiful description. Here you contain a fairly wide volume. Details of this universe, but not in words, rather in settings, in vibrations.
To feel it, yes. With your very being. I understand you can also read and hear about how to do the practice with the practitioners. And it's a whole different thing to practice with the master. He transmits the settings to you. It turns out you start to resonate with it.
There is a very clear position here in the tradition, which goes like this. There is no Tantra without a guru. There simply isn't such a thing. It's not like you read something somewhere and learn something. Of course, it's all ambiguous. It's not an axiom, but I suggest that people do a little brainstorming for themselves. Is it possible to learn? Can you learn to ride a bike just from books?
No, of course not. And that's it. Here's a simple answer. Let's break it down together, two concepts like esotericism and spirituality. What's the main difference?
Yeah, listen, we can throw anything onto these two words, and feel it.
Hello.
One person is open to the truth while another person puts different meanings into it, and that's it, and he no longer understands us. So, esotericism, spirituality, what's the difference? Or a person strives to understand and feel the world as it is, or he just decided to create a more comfortable worldview for himself that would calm his inflamed psyche. In the esoteric world, there is a lot of unnecessary, excessive, and irrelevant stuff that doesn't contribute to spiritual development. It is what it is. But if we take religion, the same goes for Christianity. How many people call themselves Christians? Just by hanging a cross on yourself, and that's it.
We'll talk about Christianity a bit later.
Let's do it a bit later. There are just people who are willing to work hard to achieve a vision. And then there are people who don't want to put in the effort, yet still continue to claim that vision. Well, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work, and that's it.
I understand. In general, the main thing is to focus on your own development, and that's it. This concept isn't that important. What is acceptance? Here's how it works. If a person wants to accept something, he understands that he needs to accept it. But he can't. So just at what point?
If he can't, it means he doesn't understand it. What is it about? It's actually difficult. Conveyed to a person who doesn't have extrasensory perception. So if a person perceives themselves only as a physical body, and that's it, it's unrealistic to explain it to them. Well, it's just impossible to explain it to him. He perceives too little. It's the same as trying to verbally explain how the world works to a child who hasn't learned the language yet. He doesn't know the language yet. He hasn't had the chance to master it. What are you telling him? The most he will feel is your state, your mood, some of your emotions. Words are empty for him, an empty sound. It's the same if a person can't perceive themselves beyond their physical body. There's no way to explain that to them. If a person has the ability to perceive, at least feel energy, then here it is already. Space for maneuvering. And obviously, acceptance is not about agreeing to everything, right? No. It's just a form of behavior. When you agree to everything, acceptance starts at the level of energy. And at the level of energy, there is a state when the energy flows through you, and there is a state when this energy cannot flow through you. Well, of course, there's the gradient. I'm currently at the extreme point. The state of a corpse, yes, where energy does not flow, and the state of the great Mahavidya, where there are absolutely no limitations for energy flowing through you. So the state when energy flows through you without limits. That's the very state. When your acceptance is absolute. Who has absolute acceptance? With the Creator. Because he cannot be an obstacle to the energy. He is that energy. But as soon as we start to reject something, we begin to block that energy, not letting it flow through you. And this has nothing at all to do with it. Relationships. To agree to everything, this is actually about something else.
To allow, you could say that we allow something, but we don't agree.
So what changes? Well, look, for example, I do not allow violence. That's it, this planet has changed. Everyone doesn't care that I don't allow it. I'm saying this again, look, we need extrasensory perception to clearly, precisely discuss this topic. To discuss, look, there is a heart in the area of the heart, the lower part of the chest. There are vibrations, energetic vibrations. These energetic vibrations at the initial stage can be felt like fire, like heat, real physical heat. Then it can even be a flame that just radiates from here. So you start interacting with the outside world through another person. Another person says you have to do this and that. You tell him, I'm not going to do that. And your heat is unwavering. The same situation, you have to do this and that. You say, okay. And your heat is unwavering. So it doesn't stick. So these two reactions are equivalent. So do it this way, do it that way. These are just your wants, your whims. This has nothing to do with the world. Devices, if you want to do it this way, go ahead. If you want to do it that way, no problem. You are in a state of acceptance, although in one case you agreed and in the other you found yourself. The next point, it's all the same. I have heat, I have fire. They tell me you have to do this and that. I say I'm not going to do that. And I start to lose my heat. It starts to fade. I generated rejection. How did I generate it? Why did this happen? What, how, why, for what purpose? It's a very deep, very complex topic where you can't figure it out without extrasensory perception, because the process happens on an energy level, on a consciousness level. You could even say a process is taking place. But the fact is, whoa, the heart is starting to fade. What am I supposed to agree to? Let's rewind. The same thing, you are obligated. I say, yes, I agree. And my heart starts to fade. And here, boom, intellect, reason, and logic step aside. So what should I do? Well, that's how it is. You don't accept it in any form. Basically, you don't accept this, what you agree to, what you refuse. For you, this is unacceptable. And you need to go back to yourself. Put the outside world on pause and say, what the hell am I reacting like this to? Why?
So it turns out this heat is like a guide, your inner guide.
Well, do you want me to ask you this question? To which most likely the majority of people will react with fading and distance. Are you stupid or just pretending?
Okay, thank you.
Well, in response, your heart will probably fade. But if your state is unshakable, if your level of acceptance, if your level of playfulness, The level of fun has reached a certain intensity. You hear this question, what? Here. I don't even know what that is.
You perceive it differently.
Of course, yes. You relate to all of this completely differently. And you position yourself in this world completely differently. And most likely no one will ever ask such a question if that state is permanent within you. But if you fall out of that state, you might run into that question. And then you either worsen your state or, like an alarm clock, it will wake you up and say, oh wait, something here isn't working for me anymore. This is acceptance. And there are practices of the level. Already the Sri Yantras, because the practices of the Sri Yantra are a conglomerate of your consciousness. These are all its facets. That's it. No matter how strange or pompous it may sound right now, all facets of your consciousness are worked through one way or another. This word is very common in Sri Yantra practices. So there you can see all your reactions to all possible manifestations in this reality thanks to your extrasensory perception. There is, for example, Shaktis. There are many of them. These Shaktis, you turn to this Shakti, you address her by name. There are at least 64 of them. You can count them and you watch how this Shakti reacts to you. If the Shakti unfolds, a whirlwind, a flower, a lotus, it doesn't matter what you call it, but it blooms right before your eyes and an energy exchange begins between you. So at the very least, everything is fine with this area. There are Shaktis that you address by name, and she doesn't react to you at all. And you're like, oops, what is this mind responsible for? You take these Talmud texts, this, that, and the other. Yeah, I can't accept that. This is just complete nonsense. The Shakti is responsible for this, that, and the other. All right, I get it. I can't accept that. I'm changing my position. I'm changing my attitude towards this. Everything is fine. This also has a right to exist. I sit down again in practice. I turn to this shaft. It slowly begins to move. But if I tell myself, no, this is still some nonsense, it just shuts down again. That's it. I can no longer be a creator. I already have this limitation within me. I amputated myself. Possibility?
Well, to communicate with these minds, you also need to have some kind of inner development.
Extrasensory.
You have to come to this.
Well, of course.
How difficult is it to achieve?
How difficult is it to achieve? It depends on how capable a person is of taking action. Everything. I show is how I learned. This is how I progressed through the steps. This is how I am being taught.
There's this concept of trusting the creator. It's trendy to talk about this now. Many do this. They say it's in your understanding, confirm or twist it. What I think is that trusting the creator is, in a practical sense, to be brave, to take risks, not to be afraid. So it's verified through things like this. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, let's be honest with each other. In most cases, trusting the creator means shifting the responsibility onto him. That's how it is, to be honest. That he will do everything for you, and you just have to pray correctly. In most cases, yeah. If we're talking about these things seriously, then trusting the creator is, of course, wonderful, but you're not trusting the creator, you're trusting yourself. You'll have to be brave. The creator is brave even without you. You'll have to take action, not the creator. First of all, you start to trust yourself. Believe in yourself. And this faith, it's not empty. This faith is quite tangible. You set a goal for yourself and achieve that goal. Wow, that's something. And your faith has strengthened. And if you believe in something abstract that will do it for you, we won't discuss anything new right now. It's all been said and done before, especially in an area like indulgence, where you just throw a bit of money, and that's it. We forgive you. Naturally, it doesn't work that way.
How many hours a day do you sleep in your normal life? When you're not teaching? And how many hours do you sleep a day when you're teaching? How much do you sleep?
The difference is absolute. I sleep as much as I want. I don't have a clear position. I don't have any significant change in my sleep patterns. Mostly I sleep about 8 hours, maybe 9, something like that. And regardless of what I'm doing, actually, when I'm teaching, the workload increases for me. Yes, my power increases and the workload increases. So the amount of sleep doesn't really change. When I'm not teaching, it makes no sense to allocate a huge amount of energy. And again, nothing changes. There's no workload, and I'm in such a state of suspended animation.
Were the Rishis once people?
Yeah, who knows them? Some Rishis appeared during the era of a different Shiva, a different primordial one. So they are that eternal. Yeah, well, whatever. Whoever came up with it, there was basically such a term. Yeah, no, of course, there probably wasn't. So who were the Rishis? The Rishis are a part of the Creator. They are just as much a part of the Creator as each of them. And once, being a part of him, they set out to disconnect from him. And they managed to disconnect. For example, Agastya said that he already knows the sixth Shiva. The sixth.
Wow. By the way, do you want to become a Rishi? Is there such a possibility?
I want to have the same abilities. I don't aim to become just like them. Exactly. Because the more I practice, the more I learn about them, the more dubious the desire becomes. Exactly like them. I want to be myself. Absolutely free.
Well, how do you find out if you've become a Rishi? It turns out you know after death.
Well, how did you find out that you were born?
I got it,
Well, it's the same here.
but there's a chance that you won't succeed.
Of course, there's always a chance that it won't work out.
Rebirth again? You embody yourself somewhere, you meet practitioners again and practice again. If, for example, you can't achieve your goal in this life,
You see, this term rebirth doesn't really match reality.
well, yeah, I just don't know how to say it differently.
I don't have such a plan. We have energy, intention. It doesn't work on the mechanism of a plan or a plan B. If you have a plan B, you don't have intention. You basically don't consider that option.
Well, it will be as it will be, right?
It's clear that multivariability exists, and that's an obvious fact. And in my case, multivariability exists. That's an obvious fact. But I don't allow for other variations. It will work out. If it doesn't work out, well, then it doesn't work out. I'll find that out at the moment it doesn't work, but I won't focus on that. I won't waste my attention or my consciousness on it. For the formation of such an event series, I don't need an event series. I need an event series. It's one clearly defined intention, which is how I set myself to them, so I never betrayed him. Everything, not everything, and now it is already this. From the level of awareness of the world as it is today, it's not something that I might end up in. It's completely unrealistic to do. This contradicts any common sense at any level. At the level of physics, at the level of thinking, at the level of energy. Well, I don't know how to shoot myself in the head. Something more at that level. So this is what intention is. When you have a plan A, plan B, and plan C, that's not intention.
So there should be a clear vision of what you want,
Uncompromising.
and then there's a chance that you'll go specifically there.
Then there can't be another chance.
It can't.
By claiming your status as a creator, you shape what you need. If you're doing it, it's kind of diverse. He is most likely to implement what requires the least effort. Because at that moment, you refuse to be a creator, and at that moment, you become a mess. And for a mess, the worst option manifests, always. Well, if we're being honest. So no, common sense, of course, tells me that anything can happen, but my intention doesn't consider any alternatives at all. Not a bit of attention there.
What is the Matrix? And is it necessary to hack it?
Such a movie.
And why is it like that? Can we say that the practices you provide are a helper in hacking the Matrix? How do I see it? With the help of practices, we can change our lives, speed up certain processes, and make them easier. And some people, even masters, talk about what they call it hacking the Matrix. So it's like you're changing a rule, not even a rule, but some kind of the order of things in your life.
Any high-quality programmer, well, basically can be a hacker. I'm speaking by analogy right now. Any hacker, well, one way or another, is a programmer. And then the question arises, why are they doing this? Well, if I draw an analogy with myself, I don't care. I can be both a hacker and a programmer. But my goal, to put it bluntly, is to make money and stop doing this altogether. What is money? That's the freedom I'm striving for. It's an abstraction. This word is by analogy. In our material world, money gives freedom. Where I'm heading, money doesn't exist at all. But to explain, to convey my essence, I have to make these analogies. That is, if a person is interested in hacking software code, he does not want freedom. He wants to play with the computer. He's sitting at the computer and interacting with it. If a regular programmer just works for a salary and he'll sit at that computer until probably they retire and still continue to sit there. Because in principle, you can sit there at any age. I don't want to, basically, sitting at the computer, but I have to sit behind it to get the chance to stop sitting behind it. So on one hand, everything I know and can do, of course, can be used that way. But my personal goal is to completely stop interacting with it. So we know the structure of the world, we know how a person is structured, how reality is structured, what principles it works on, seeing energies, managing energy. Yes, you can build your life however you see fit, but you still remain in the dream of the brain. And these endless stories about, well, there is reincarnation, there is no reincarnation. Yes, what difference does it make whether it exists or not? So globally, you're still doing all of this within that matrix. Whether you get reborn 100,000 times or 500 times, eventually the brain will wake up. Or you might not be reborn at all, and bravo, you'll wake up. Nothing will fundamentally change. I don't want to be there when it wakes up. And all of this...
Well, okay, as for you, there are people who want to play this game.
So let them play.
But they can... using practices.
I just said that using them is like having some kind of reserve. Absolutely, nothing. Once and that's it.
So we need to break the matrix?
Yeah, it's not a hack. Matrices. You just know how it works. Well, it's the same thing, you know. For the next year, all the champions, you can bet money on them if you want or not. All the champions for the next year. Or, for example, all the numbers for winning lottery tickets. Well, if you want, go wash there, get your winnings. If you want, stay home or sell that information. So yeah, you can do that. You can, but it's everyone's own business. Just the other day, well, not exactly the other day, it's been quite a while. Well, there was a situation when a person individually received the transmission of the Sri Yantra knowledge, and she had some kind of whim. This whim was realized within a day, but she refused it because it wasn't fully realized, exactly how she wanted it. So there were still some nuances that she was like, that's also an incorrect process. I also listened to that story and I said, well, why did you refuse it? Well, there it is, I say, so you can realize it one more time. Well, if you don't like it the second time, you can realize it a third time. Why do you refuse it the first time? And that's a very technically illiterate move. It's the same thing you want to eat, right? I'm hungry. They tell you, here, food. It wasn't cooked by the right chef. I'm not going to go...
That's some kind of pride.
Of course. Of course, it's pride. What does it do? It hinders us from moving forward quickly. Any person who has a high degree of pride constantly trips over it and ends up breaking their face. Why do they say it's a sin? Yes, because it's uncomfortable to live with her. It's just plain stupid. It's uncomfortable to live with her. When is it obvious to you? You ask yourself, why am I even doing this? When is it not obvious to you? When it flatters your ego, you live very slowly. And there, I don't know. All your surroundings have already done a bunch of things, and you're still stretching your neck and lifting your nose. Well, I mean, these things are it's clear, so obvious, it's so easy to see in another person. But when you approach the mirror, for some reason, the ability to perceive disappears right away.
I'm looking forward to the comments on this. The video, because we're going to talk about the topic of taboos, the topic of religion.
Traditions, it's been a while since someone threw slippers at me. It's time to look at the audience.
People have a lot of different opinions on this matter, and everyone defends their opinion in whatever way they can. That makes sense. So that's the topic of taboos. And I would like to talk to you about this. All right, let's start with this. Let's start right away with who Jesus is, what kind of person he is, and why he incarnated.
So you're trying to put me in a box right away?
Yes.
In my perception, he is a man. He is a man who learned very serious techniques. He is a man who realized the body of light and demonstrated it. He is a man who performed the deeds attributed to him in the books, the Gospels. I have no doubt at all in his power, in his strength, in his abilities, and in his achievements. But I can't say that he is God. In the sense of how he is portrayed, I can say that each of us is God, then there are absolutely no questions. Yes, that is also God, then I am God too. Yes, that is, for example, the Son of the Creator, then I am also the Son of the Creator. I absolutely cannot agree that he is not like me. We have different degrees of ability, yes. We have different degrees of power, yes. We have different degrees of ability to perceive, yes. But either each of us is a creator, each of us is a Mahade. Well, or all of us humans.
He was just there, probably very practiced. It is described there, so his ways were weighed. His life is only in the Bible, and the rest of the time is not described.
So we don't only have the Bible. There are huge scientific studies, research about his life. Yes, that's absolutely right. His life is described very briefly in the Gospels in a short amount of time. But historically, they tracked where he was and what he was doing and where he could have potentially learned all these things. This all makes sense because the history of a person is not limited to just one book. There are also mentions of him. And right now, I won't take this on in the name of science. What is where I am and where is science? But if a person sets such a goal, it won't be hard for them to find it on the internet. So to read about the research regarding the life of Jesus Christ, and yes, he grew up, he traveled, he learned, he received these initiations, he got these teachings, he practiced, he went through very serious ascetic practices. By the way, these ascetic practices are already described when he was in the desert. But I myself too, inspired, he performed serious ascetic practices like these. And he achieved it, he succeeded. So, this is a great example to follow, a magnificent example to emulate. Everything attributed to his words, everything he said. I read it, and I have no objections to that. So it all fits into my worldview. So, a very worthy practitioner, what else can I say?
Well, okay, but here's the thing. The fact that his body disappeared. Yes. Is that what he turned it into, a body of light? Yes.
That's exactly the fact. This is precisely a reflection in Christianity of the processes that I strive for.
So you could say he practiced roughly what you practice?
The practices that are described, the ones he performed, I understand them, but I practice differently because I gained my knowledge in a slightly different tradition.
But there was a goal. Both are pursuing one thing.
Freedom. He returned to his father. Accordingly, he became equal to him. Accordingly, he stepped out of the gathered. If you're equal, you're no longer inside. Maybe I'm just a little bit right now, so a thought crossed my mind. Perhaps his achievement is emphasized by the status that he is God. Achievement. Well then, maybe. But it's obvious that at this moment the word Nana is repeated many times. My abilities, they are different. That's a fact. And the space where he is and the space where I am, it's a little bit different. So yes, you can look up to him. These are very serious practices. But these practices are only serious for those who repeat them. Those who read about them, there's nothing serious there. Those who believe in this, there's nothing serious there. Only the one who strives to repeat this, the one who follows the commandments. So in my view, Christianity and a Christian is a person who follows the commandments. Yes, he might succeed at some things and not succeed at others. Yes, he might succeed at some things and he might fail at others. That's okay. But if a person just says, I believe and does nothing, I think that's not really normal.
Well, look, what do you think? Were these practices at the roots of the emergence of religion so people could practice because it turns out that a person made a transition into the body of light? Yeah. It's such a big practice. Yeah. Well, it's such a deep practice. Well, in life, basically we receive commandments, recommendations on how to live.
Well, you see,
Practice is nothing. Well,
you can't get far on just those recommendations because the same Jesus Christ, if you believe the Gospels, he said to turn the other cheek if you were struck on the left. And at the same time, he drove the merchants out of the temple with a whip. Something just doesn't correlate. So, by immersing yourself in these processes through jnana, that is, exclusively as a reader, you won't understand anything there. You won't gain any value from this. If you have a guide in all of this, a priest, and not just a priest, which performs simply functions, namely a priest, that is, a person who has gone through this path, who has realized the essence of belief, who has realized the essence of tradition, and who can instruct you who can explain to you what is meant there. And, like this verbal yes expression is applicable. This starts to become something very different. This is where direct teaching begins. Live broadcast, it's the same with us. You open, for example, some Vedic book, you start reading it, and in your head, it's just like a tractor turning around. You go to Ashan and say, Ashan, I didn't understand a damn thing. He tells you, well, look, let's consider specific situations. Here, I'm talking about my specific situation. Well, look, you're here, here, and here. It seemed questionable. I'm like, aha. So what now? And then another situation arises, and I'm disarmed again, because it's a completely different situation. You run back to Ashan again. Oshan, I encountered some kind of process, some kind of effect. Oshan, something happened that doesn't quite fit. Oshan, not a book, not the memory of what you've read, but a person who has already achieved a certain level of mastery, of very high mastery, who can easily convey and explain things to you. So people are starting to come to me too. Well, I'm also slowly starting to get into these processes. When a person, for example, has completed the first year, then the second year, trains with me in a closed practitioners club, and then suddenly they hit a wall and say, listen, but nothing works. I say, what do you mean nothing works? Everything works. It's just that at that moment, your mind wasn't very flexible, and you simply made a mistake. So you're basically telling me about her. Once, that's it, the person is back on, awake, everything is clear now. Suddenly, he's gone. It happens. I also hit the wall like that. You can ponder for a long time about why this happens. But there definitely needs to be a guide, absolutely. Without it, there will be no development. It's not implied. Theoretically, yes, of course. Theoretically, each of us has a divinity in our heart, and we can draw any information from there. Theoretically, well, just take it and do it. Try to do it. There should always be someone who fundamentally surpasses you, because this stupidity, this fading of consciousness, this inhibition can be caught for many reasons. If there is no one to pull you out of there, or at least to clearly explain to you that you are now in this state, you yourself may not return to consciousness. It's the same as with a mentally ill person. They can't heal themselves. A person is ready to crash.
I don't think any priest will tell you about energy.
And that's not needed there. There's a different tradition there, a different approach.
Yeah, but it still feels very narrow.
Listen, I can't say if it's narrow or broad, because even in my tradition, some people, for example, enjoyed doing rituals while I couldn't stand them. Some, like me, enjoyed meditating, while others couldn't stand those meditations. Someone went into martial arts, into massage, into all sorts of mixtures of different components. Because when you're doing massage, you need oil made from 108 components. So that's a whole separate science. You're pushing this onto someone, you're making money off of it. For me, it was just, well, it's all one tradition. Even within the tradition, you still choose what you will dedicate yourself to. There is a unique state called Ashan, where you are forced to know everything. I said a long time ago, guys, don't look for Ashan in me. I'm not Ashan. And nothing has changed in that moment. I continue to stubbornly move the way I like, the way I enjoy. People are starting to come around me who also enjoy this, who also like it. And I even joke sometimes saying, so when are we going to study rituals? What rituals? I say, great, I like that approach. Although sometimes, yeah, there are situations when someone comes in and says, hey, what about this ritual? And I say, I know. Oh, can you show me? I say, I don't deal with passing on rituals. I really, really don't like it. Not because it's bad. It all works wonderfully. I just don't like my personal attitude. And my heart doesn't fade when I say that I don't like it. Because there's a friend, it's just the desire to engage in this. So if we take Christianity, there are holy people within this tradition, there are really very serious practices there. With vision, they're called seers. Seers. Yes. Can they be found? Yes, found in some areas. Don't live in Russia. The way they reach that state. Read the Bible. It's all described there. How to reach these states. Fasts, asceticism, prayers. All of this. Hermitages. Let's go. Will it work? Yes, of course it will work. The rules there are much stricter than in my tradition. So to be honest, it's much more serious there. It's exactly about self-restraint. Let's take Buddhism. The same thing. There's a practice called vipassana. You can't move at all. Well, what is it if not a practice? It's a practice. It's just that some people can do it, while others will say, forget it, no way, never. Well, then live as you like. No one forces anyone to go there. So everything is fine there. The techniques, the technologies they have allow you to achieve serious results. But you have to do it. You have to take your life and spend it. In practice, then yes, you'll also become a shameful old man and spend the last 10 years of your life being a very popular person.
I really like how your adequacy and depth go together. And if you agree with me, write in the comments. I'm really impressed by that. Right, Anton?
Me and adequacy, that's something new.
Well, really, why? You respect religion, you have a good attitude towards practices.
So, if that's the case, why should we treat others any differently?
That's true. Well, many masters say that religion won't get you anywhere. Well, as we understood, to get something, you need to work for it.
Of course, yes, no, everything is fine in religion, just don't forget that. If we draw an analogy with the Institute, then the fact that you sat there for 5 years, it might not lead you to anything either.
Let's talk about the concept of faith. What is faith? People often ask, do you believe in God? Well, for example, I have a question right away.
Do you believe in the hand? I believe maybe I don't know how to answer that question.
There are a lot of details in this. So where do you end? And God begins. In religion, they say that God is in heaven. In heaven, right? But again, where do you end and where does heaven begin? So it's a meter away from you, 5 meters, 100. So these important details are often ignored by people. Although these are very important questions. So it seems like everyone has accepted that belief is up there, somewhere in heaven. Why don't people ask themselves such very important details and questions? That's not interesting.
Why don't people ask about quantum physics? Some people do ask themselves. A large part of people don't even know what that is. They have quantum psychologists, quantum businessmen, but in reality, the quantum world is what exists at the microscopic level, substances. I don't have any psychologists sitting in the cover of my book at the level of quarks. Well, I mean, why? They just don't ask and don't ask, so it shouldn't be exactly like that.
Those who ask themselves will come to their answers sooner or later.
The answers are the same for everyone. In essence, in form, they can be different. For example, I teach in Russian, while someone else teaches in English. On the outside, we pronounce different sounds, but the essence can be absolutely identical. These are more like, rhetorical topics, probably. Why? Well, because of what? Well, I just want it that way.
Well, okay, freedom.
Every person has free will and they manage it. So as it counts, it needs to be, and he can even manage it in such a way that will become a slave. And that is also his free will, as strange as it may sound.
Could it be that religions were created for specific tasks of people? For example, for those who need to go through some kind of processing of some sin, Christianity, since Christianity specifically teaches not to sin, for those who need to learn to serve, Islam, for those who need to work on their ego to be born in Buddhism. And because there is more there, it's talked about. And what do you think? Is that true? Was it thought out?
No, all religions talk about the same thing. If we look at the essence at the root,
the emphasis is just placed on different things, somewhere for the processing of sin.
I can allow that.
That, in different religions, there are different approaches to bring you to the essence, and a person, when they incarnate, can choose their religion for themselves. Honestly, they say like this that...
Of course you can.
So there is, for example, the Bible, right?
It's mostly Christian. There are neighboring countries that are mostly Muslim, although, well, basically, the peoples are very similar. Well, of course, there are no strict limitations here. And yes, no. Why is there a struggle with the ego in Buddhism and in Christianity and in Islam? Everywhere they fight against the ego. But again, what do we call the ego? For example, we have the ego and the false ego, and there are no complaints about the ego. But with the false ego, that's where the questions start. Like, what kind of nonsense is this? Because we have a vision, we have a clear understanding of what human consciousness is and what foreign consciousness is. It's all in one body. And foreign consciousness is the false ego, while human consciousness in that part is the true ego. We don't fight it. On the contrary, we create conditions for it to stop clinging to the external world. And not through prohibitions. There are different approaches to satisfaction, but the essence of all of them is to remember that you exist, that you create. Yes, you can pray there for decades, but to remember that you exist, that's something you can do from the start. To be active, to manifest by building temples and stupas, to build in the context of Buddhism. So, to be fully engaged at the level of matter, in the end, to realize that you are a creator and you can also be a scientist who has dug deep into the essence of the universe through technology, through techniques, through an endless number of various studies. Nikola Tesla, he spent his whole life working with electricity, and at some point he said, I know how the world works. You can stretch it to fit, yeah, all these concepts, but if we stretch them to fit, what do we end up with? If it's all about the same thing anyway.
Yes. Was Jesus the son of the god, Brahma? And the son of which god?
By no means. Brahma has a son, Prajapati Daksha. Christ is present in me. And again, there is a hierarchy. So we have Brahma, we have Vishnu, we have Shiva, we have Atman, we have Archangel Ishvara, and all of this is just a state of the same being. And that's all. It's just a state of the same being.
Really?
Yes. How interesting. And we also have, here is Anton Mikhailov, who is also a state of the original. So if we try to figure out who is related to whom, we dive into...
That's not something you should be doing.
Yeah, why can we do this? Well, you're getting surrounded by a kaleidoscope. You keep looking at him. But if you really want to see all of this, that's the very last thing you should be doing. It's about diving into who is related to whom. So, again, in my perception, Jesus Christ is a man who showed how it should be done. He just took it and showed how it should be done, and achieved everything that is attributed to him. But that doesn't mean that another one can't do that. And maybe he showed this for that reason. Look, how it can be done. It's the same way the Rishis came and organized the Paramparas back in their time. An eternal being has come, capable of surviving the Mahapralaya, and says, guys, look, this is how it can be done. And it doesn't matter who you are at all. A person, an inorganic being, a demon, a sur, an asura, an angel.
Have teachers of such a level come to our material world? Like Jesus, I understand.
Of course, they have come. These events are described the same Bhagavad Gita. Rama, this is the purest embodiment of a very highly hierarchical being. You could say it's Shiva. You see, we can dive into all of this again right now, but basically, the original, it is one and whole. There is no dismemberment in it. There are no Antons, no Jesus, no Brahma. It's just all of this. All of this, at some point, just goes blop and splashes everywhere. And what is it that it splashed onto? Imagine a glass of water. We're pouring it out, and this water, somewhere frozen, turned into ice. Somewhere it starts to evaporate and is in a state of steam, and somewhere it forms puddles. It's all the same water from the glass. If we create the right conditions, it can end up back in that glass again. Well, I'm exaggerating a bit, but I'm trying to explain how it all happened. So, when did the original manifest everything that we know now? And it continues to manifest this. It's an endless process. It's unstoppable. It keeps going, and keeps expanding. He, as the original, has not ceased to exist. Purna Purnamedam. There's a mantra like that. So the whole came out of the whole, but the whole didn't become any less whole from this. It hasn't lost its fullness. It exists in all possible manifestations. And the manifestation of Anton, yes, and the manifestation of everyone who is looking at me right now is also a manifestation of the original. And so, if you remember this, if your goal is to bring this out of yourself, to awaken, from all of this you'll awaken. And if your goal is to keep digging into who is related to whom, yeah, well, there won't be enough life for that. Well, in the books, at the same time, yes, it is present. So let's take the Bible there. This one gave birth to that one, and that one gave birth to this one. Okay, fine. Let's take it. To him, Vedic text, Atman realized Vishnu, and Vishnu gave birth to Brahma. Brahma cannot realize Vishnu. But at the same time, Brahma is not born. It is created. And so it started, and off it went, and all of this. Still, the original source is the same. And every being, after performing a certain number of actions, can, remember this, to do this you need to have attention within yourself. If a person places their attention somewhere else, or another being places their attention somewhere else, then they won't be able to remember this, because you are looking at the alley of perfection.
I really want to see as clearly as you do.
Don't train.
Yes, we have, thank God, fortunately, we have all the opportunities for this. Practices, courses, anything at all. All the tools are inside you. You just need to find them and learn how to use them, right?
Yes, you just need to take them. You don't even have to search for them. Look, they have all been given away.
All gone.
Yes, you just need to take them and practice. Moreover, the majority of these tools are absolutely freely available. You don't even have to pay money for this. So everything is there, but no one will do it for you. And it won't want to, and it's pointless, and it just doesn't work that way.
Yes, you'll have to work hard. Well, fortunately, these are very pleasant processes.
Actually, the difference is between me and the person who just wants it now. In that, I've already spent time on it. That is, while someone was making a career, I was sitting there with my laptop reading. While someone was raising a child, I was sitting with a band.
You have a truly unique path. I traveled everywhere I could, including India, Africa, and parts of Russia. I finally found these practices.
Yes, and while someone was living a socially approved life, I was spending my last money to find myself a teacher. I just did it in a different sequence. At the same time, sometimes people come to me who have already raised children and built a career, and everything is great for them, and they've done everything over. At the ring, it's time to grow spiritually.
Each has a path.
A different sequence. Well, that happens too, and that's not a problem.
What would have happened if you hadn't met your teacher in this life?
So, I wouldn't be here.
Who is Lucifer? What can you say about this? The character? What is the essence?
My answer to this question changes from time to time. At first, I said that I had never seen him myself. Wherever I went, whatever extrasensory abilities I used, I didn't see him. People who practice with me, who have no doubt that they possess extrasensory perception, have never told me about it. So I've always said it's a collective image of human foolishness. After some time, though, listening to the description of this word, that is what is implied, I began to get the impression that the people who launched this word, describing this process, they actually had something in mind, and that something is nothing other than an alien consciousness within each person. It's not our consciousness. This is that very inner dialogue, which it drives you in circles, like a dead weight, kicking you with emotions. I fought with that inner dialogue. I know nature very well. I clearly remember those states when something happened in your life, and it keeps spinning and spinning, and it drains you to the point of nausea. It just keeps going, and you can't stop it. You really feel powerless against it. I mean, I say, I don't want to think about this anymore. Enough. Just enough of talking about it. No, just going over the same one. And the same thought. I can't have any complaints. I can't have any. Some experiences, I know what mental reality is. Something inside me kept grinding those millstones, saying that either everything is bad, or everything is scary, or a great injustice has happened to you. I say, it's fine, everything's fair, I messed up, and I got what I deserved. No, all of that, it's all there, all the scoundrels. I would clearly perceive that it's not me. It's just some kind of crap in my head that it pretends to be my thoughts.
Wait, how can it not be you if everything that exists is one and the same? So, it turns out that this alien consciousness, whatever it is also a part of the Creator. Of course. But why do you call it alien then?
Alien.
Alien, yes, alien.
Because I have no way to control it. It doesn't obey.
Maybe then it's just that there's no way to control it, rather than it being alien.
No, it's definitely alien. But look, it's really what you are aware of. So, can you control my hand?
No.
So, how is that possible? So, it all happened in the beginning. Why can't you control my hand? Well, there is an obvious reality. There is a moment in space and time where we have certain characteristics. Yes, if you put in the effort, those characteristics change. And at some point, you can enter such a state. For you, the gate will be like a little crumb in the palm of your hand. And then you'll fall out of that state. Yes, we can travel through all sorts of variations of this consciousness. Yes, it is possible. It's all accessible. But obviously right now I perceive this world through my physical body with the help of my senses. This is the reality in which I currently live. And in relation to the present moment, this consciousness is absolutely not alien. It generates what? Well, right now nothing is generating anything. But back then it generated things that were beyond my control. And my inner self reacted to that. These strings. And they were tugging at my strings. I saw emotions in myself that I didn't want to experience. So I don't want to experience this emotion. It doesn't let me go. It keeps me on edge. It's like being shocked. And you can't detach yourself from those wires. I experienced all of this, but how did I experience it? In contrast, until I had this contrast, I sincerely believed that it was me, that I was angry, that I was offended, that I hated, that I was treated wrongly. Another person, a scoundrel, I genuinely believed that it was like that. And then at some point, going through ascetic practices, very serious, deep practices, going through mantra practices, after the rituals, this thing washed over me. I had a period of time when I lived without her. And then when she showed up again, I was like, who are you? And then, wait, I lived my life with her. How is that possible? Wait. So the contrast appeared. As soon as the contrast appears, you get the chance to compare, to realize, to feel it. And so when I encountered it again, after another amount of time without this thing, and how crazy it is, it's fierce, she's psycho, I don't know what words to use. And I saw this in the movie Revolver by Guy Ritchie. So I was watching the movie Revolver, and he showed this. I was like, whoa, I thought, no way. Yeah, that's even cooler. The Matrix. But I've already experienced that. I saw it in the movie. I went through that process myself. I was like, no way, this movie exists. Wow.
I realized that this was it, yeah?
Yeah, no, I already understood that this was it, but I didn't expect to see it in Glivet, actually. There, yes, the movie The Matrix is great, magnificent fun. But it's exactly this nuance, this aspect, that's just... You might be wondering, who is Goryevich? Why put such an emphasis? That's a very precise accent. So he definitely knows something, has some skills, otherwise he couldn't put that accent on. Of course, I didn't learn about this from the movie. The first layer of knowledge about this process was in the books of Castaneda. He's like, okay, there's something we have, some kind of... Well, okay, I couldn't see it. I read it in a book. I found out about it. So I just went on to get more anxious and stressed out. Nothing has changed. And only when I was able to live without that thing, and then it came back. I'm like, whoa, now I see you. So now I see how you do it. And I recently had, well, not so recently, a lot of time has passed now when I did a really big job. We recorded a course, The Power of Consciousness 2 in Bali. So I told the guys, I'm going on vacation, I need to cool off, I need a little break. Take care of your passions, because they are already starting to push you. In my tradition, no matter how forbidden it is to realize one's passions, on the contrary, the realization of one's passions is an integral part of the practice. In my tradition, and I went to engage with my passions, just enjoying myself, just savoring it. Naturally, at that moment, I was fading away. Naturally, I was getting dull. Naturally, my consciousness was dimming at that moment. That's normal. That's how it should be. And at some point, that thing grabbed me again. I said, good evening. Long time no see. But that was already funny. That was already cool. But it happened again. And when I say whatever you've been through, whatever states have visited you there, you can do it. Everything will go down the drain if you don't give it a chance to develop. And that's why I say that. Having gained some speed through practices, you have an even better chance to take off. To let go. If you will practice for hours, not just live in that state. At some point, you no longer have the opportunity to practice for hours. You just live like that. And the encounter with this inorganic being, it's like the nostalgia of how it tries to put you in a loop so harshly. In a way, it even got some pleasure out of it. Like that, yes. There were times, that's it, now get out of here. That's it, those times are long gone. You can go through all of this to experience.
We briefly discussed the topic of Lucifer.
Yes, and I totally admit that in principle, the word Lucifer, the word devil, can be attributed to this thing. Basically, it's possible.
Well, that sounds harmonious. I agree. How can I agree if I haven't seen these processes? Yes, that's another point. Thank you, Anton. I really enjoyed talking with you. Very interesting answers to important topics. Friends, just a reminder that you can find all the links to Anton's training below the video.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical Energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.